It was the dead of winter, and the harsh Alaskan winds howled through the dense pine forests, carrying with them a bitter cold that could freeze a man to the bone. Snow covered everything in sight, creating a vast white wilderness that stretched endlessly in every direction. It was in this unforgiving landscape that Daniel, a rugged outdoorsman, was making his way back to his cabin after a long day of trapping. His thick fur-lined coat did little to keep the biting chill at bay, but years of surviving in the wilderness had hardened him against such discomforts. As he trudged through the knee-deep snow, something unusual caught his eye: a small, dark shape half buried beneath a snowdrift near a frozen creek. At first, he thought it was just another fallen branch, but something in his gut told him otherwise. Curiosity and instinct pushed him forward, and as he got closer, his breath hitched. It was a wolf pup. The tiny creature was curled up into a tight ball, its fur covered in frost, its body still, barely rising and falling with weak breaths. Daniel knelt beside it, brushing away the snow, revealing its fragile frame. The pup's eyes were shut, and its body was unnaturally cold. If he had come even an hour later, it would have been too late. Daniel had spent years in these woods and had encountered many wolves, but never like this. He knew that wolves were strong and resilient, but this pup had been abandoned, or worse, lost. There was no sign of its mother or the pack. If he left it here, it wouldn't survive the night. He sighed, knowing what he had to do. Carefully, he scooped up the freezing pup, cradling it against his chest to share his body heat. It barely reacted, just a faint whimper escaping its lips. Without wasting another moment, he picked up his pace and headed toward his cabin, his footprints disappearing quickly in the falling snow. Inside the warmth of his small log cabin, Daniel wasted no time. He stoked the fire until the flames roared, casting a comforting glow throughout the room. Gently, he laid the pup on a thick blanket near the hearth, rubbing its small body to encourage circulation. He reached for a warm cloth and began dabbing away the frost clinging to its fur, careful not to cause it more distress. Minutes passed, then an hour, and finally, the pup stirred. Its eyelids fluttered open, revealing a pair of striking blue eyes that locked onto Daniel's face. It was weak, but it was alive. A small smile tugged at the corner of Daniel's lips. "You're tougher than you look, little guy," he murmured. The pup tried to lift its head but was too weak. Daniel knew it needed nourishment. He quickly warmed some milk and fed it to the pup using a small cloth, allowing it to suckle tiny amounts at a time. The pup drank eagerly, its body trembling less as warmth returned to it. Over the next few days, Daniel nursed the pup back to health. He kept it warm, fed it small portions of food, and slowly, the pup grew stronger. It began to move around, cautiously at first, but soon enough, it was following him around the cabin, its tiny paws clicking against the wooden floor. Daniel couldn't help but chuckle at how attached it had become. He hadn't planned on keeping it. Wolves belonged in the wild. But each day, as he watched the pup grow stronger, something inside him shifted. He named it Shadow, for its dark fur and the way it followed him everywhere. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between man and wolf deepened. Shadow became Daniel's constant companion, joining him on his trips into the woods, playfully nipping at his boots, and curling up beside him at night. Despite his instincts, Daniel couldn't bring himself to let the pup go. But deep down, he knew he had to. One evening, as the sun cast a golden hue over the snow-covered landscape, Daniel spotted something in the distance. A pack of wolves, moving through the trees, their howls echoing through the valley. Shadow's ears perked up, his body tensed, and for the first time, Daniel saw something in his eyes, a longing. Daniel's heart clenched. He had saved Shadow's life, raised him, cared for him. But Shadow was not a pet. He was wild at heart. He needed to be with his own kind. The next morning, Daniel made the toughest decision of his life. He took Shadow to the edge of the forest, near where he had spotted the pack the night before. The young wolf hesitated, looking up at him with those piercing blue eyes, as if sensing what was about to happen. Daniel knelt down, ruffling the thick fur on Shadow's neck. "Go on, buddy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "This is where you belong." Shadow whimpered, nudging his hand one last time before turning toward the trees. Daniel watched as he took a few hesitant steps, then stopped, looking back one final time. Their eyes met, man and wolf, sharing a silent understanding. Then, with one last look, Shadow bounded into the woods, disappearing into the wild where he belonged. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where his companion had been. The forest felt quieter, lonelier. But he knew he had done the right thing. Weeks passed, and Daniel returned to his usual routine, though the cabin felt emptier without Shadow's presence. He often found himself listening for the familiar patter of paws or the playful growl that had once filled the space. Then, one night, as he sat by the fire, a distant howl cut through the silence. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He stepped outside, looking toward the tree line. There, silhouetted against the moonlight, stood a lone figure, a wolf with striking blue eyes. Shadow. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then, with a final haunting howl, Shadow turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Daniel with nothing but the cold wind and the bittersweet warmth of knowing that, somewhere out there, his wild friend was free. And with that, Daniel smiled. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartwarming rescues, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more incredible tales of human and animal bonds to life. See you in the next one.